Hello, everybody. Welcome to this webinar. Welcome especially to Michelle and the rest of the guests. So today we're going to be diving in to getting our work out into the world. And Michelle has got 5 great subjects that we're going to dive into. Just to remind you, so Michelle is an adoptive mom, and she's also a publisher, and you've done TEDx and all sorts of different fantastic things. And how many books have you seen helped publish?
Thousands. I've published about 100 in the last year. Right.
So this lady is prolific with a team, right? How many in your team? There's quite a few in your team.
Well, there's 20 of us that, some are full-time, some are part-time, but we have a core group of about 6, but there's 20 people, including all our editors and designers and so forth.
Wow. So what we're doing is we're distilling all that knowledge that Michelle's got into 5 kind of top things that she thinks that we need to know to get our work out into the world. So the first one is about the why, right, Michelle?
It is. And I just want to thank you for having me back. I feel like we're old friends now. So thank you. Yeah. And this isn't just about adoptive stories. This is about any story, right? It may be your adoptive story that you wish to tell, but maybe there's a different story that you wish to tell, or maybe there's a story plus the adoptive story that you want to tie in together. I don't know. It's your life. But what I will say is that if you feel inside that you have something to share, then you need to share it. There are lots of different ways to do it, right? Is it okay if I just dive right in, Simon? I'm just going to go. Yeah. So there's a lot of ways to share it. You can do a TEDx, you can do a book, you can do a podcast like Simon. There's lots of ways to share your message. If you're called, if there's anything inside of you that's asking you to share your message, then I encourage you to do it. It does not mean you have to suddenly be famous with 1 million TikTok followers. It does not mean that you have to be on TEDx stage. What it means is you have something inside calling you to share a message. So just start there. If you have big dreams to be on a big stage, great. And if you don't, but you still feel like you want to share, that's enough. And what I sometimes see is that the best way to get started with really understanding what your core message is to write it. So even if you want to be a speaker, if you write first, it helps give you real clarity and real discernment as to what you want to say and what you don't want to say. Now, in my work with lots and lots of women, especially women who maybe have gone through some trauma, and men who've gone through trauma too.
He's put so much
mute
every single project. So
there,
if you work on this topic,
guys,
a project in his office that you can actually start and finish.
Hey, now then, this is the bit where I forget where the mute button.
Where the mute is. I don't think I can mute her.
Yeah.
There you go. So there's something about writing your story out that is hugely cathartic. And that does not mean it needs to end up in the book. It may end up in the book, but it may not. And so the first piece is, are you called to share something, that some wisdom you have, some experience you have? I'm talking nonfiction here, right? Your story. Do you have something inside of you prodding you to share that? And if so, I encourage you to start writing. And Don't worry about whether this first initial writing is going to end up in a book or not, because that trips us all up. We're like, well, I don't want anyone to read this paragraph. And oh my gosh, I'm throwing so-and-so under the bus on this paragraph, right? And then it shuts down our creative process and we end up not writing because we're so stuck in the weeds about what's going to end up being published, what it's going to look like in a year from now. So the first step is just to honor yourself. You have a story to share. That is your why, and that's enough. That if that's what it is, that's plenty. That's enough. People write just because they love to write, just like they love to hike or love to dance or love to paint, right? So if you want to write, write. And if you don't want to write but want to share your story, write. And in the process of writing, you will find yourself get stuck. We all do. Even writers who've written many, many books get stuck. And this is the opportunity to go even deeper into the place where you're stuck. Anyone who's been through any therapy is going to get this. If you're writing about something, say, traumatic, or your relationship with a mother, or your relationship with a sibling, or anything that sort of involves trauma or love, right? That's where a lot of the triggers are for all of us. That's where to go in even deeper in the writing. Now, if you need help, go get help. Yeah, it's all traumatic, I know. If you need help, go get help. Go get therapy. Go do whatever you need to do. Take care of yourself. Don't use the writing to take you into a dark hole that you can't get yourself out of, right? However, writing is so cathartic. That's why so many people do it. And that's why people talk about, being in this dark place when they write. And as you go into that place, if you find yourself getting stuck, just keep writing, go deeper and allow the words to come out however they want to come out. And the first step about all this is to remember it may or may not ever end up in a book or in a speech. I've written a lot of stuff, most of which has never been published. And what the writing sometimes does is it shows me exactly like what I really stand for and what I'm really to put my stake in the ground about. Like, I want to be known for this. I want this to be on paper. And in the writing, the process, you'll go, wow, where did that come from? That's just drivel. Like, I don't really even believe that. I'll write stuff I don't even really believe. And I realize it's just conditioning or something a therapist said or something a relative said. But when you write it down, your subconscious is working it all out. And it's amazing. And that's the first step of writing your book. Now, we can talk about actual outlines and project timelines and all of that, and you will need that as well. But the first step is just to use it as a process to write your story out.
Yeah.
Does that make sense, Simon?
It does. And the thing that's coming to my mind is that so I had a freak out in a therapy room with a therapist like years ago when she asked me why I hadn't why I'd paused my reunion, right, my search. And somebody told me that only like last year that's what's supposed to happen, right? You're supposed to break through. So, like you're supposed to get stuck, I guess. You're supposed to you're supposed to get stuck in therapy or break through or have a meltdown, and you're supposed to get stuck. Writer's block is part of the course.
Part of it. Yeah.
It's part of it. And and the other thing is that some of this stuff for us is so far down in our subconscious that like the writing it down is cathartic because it's the first time we've ever seen it consciously, right? We're conscious of it. We're reading it back and we become conscious of it. And that might be the first time that it's actually been in our conscious mind.
Yeah, and it's different when you're alone with your thoughts than when you're in therapy.
Yeah.
Right? It's scary to go into that deep place, and you just got to hang with it. And I would say, Simon, I think all of life is like that. When we get stuck in life, we get to make a choice. Are we going to use this stuckness to break through or go a different direction? Like, it's not always about breaking through. It's just like there's a wall there, and what are we going to do? Are we going to go over it, under it? It's like that kid's bear story. Got to go over it, got to go under it, got to go through it, right? Yeah. It's just a choice. You don't have to like break through everything. It could be you just walk around it, right? Using that metaphor. But if there's a wall, you got to do something with it, or you are just going to end up, being on the other side of the wall.
And you may want to, I've done a lot of stuff around this, and sometimes I've been told, just pick a different door sign, pick a different wall, pick a different door, go where you're called to go, right? So sometimes, I've started my book 3 times, and I've got stuck each time, right? And I've got to like 10, 12,000 words. And I've got stuck, and realized just put it down. To put it down, I felt that I haven't done enough of the other stuff to write the book. And as we said last time, I'm actually happier in a conversation than I am in that solo place of writing a book. So yeah, I channel my stuff into the podcast. Sometimes I guess the tricky bit is deciding when it's intuition, when the stuck is intuition, and when it's actually,
No, these are you and I always talk about just life lessons in general, right? That's the tricky bit about everything. Is it your intuition telling you to not go, or is it fear telling you to not go, or right? I want to say the other thing about that too. I sometimes work with writers that take very, very long time to get a book done, like years. And the book that you start to write is rarely the book you end up writing. And that's okay. And what happens is you're just a different person a year later, right? You lived a whole nother year of life. And so it's okay. If you're writing a very specific message and you want to write, and you want to bullet point and outline and take people through a 3-step process to heal, or whatever it might be, or whatever your story is, right? Then you stick to that and write that book, because that's a specific outcome. And you may go through so much writing the book and so much life, and just new ideas pop up that allow the book to be a creative process, just like a painting, just like traveling. If any of you travel, rarely, if you like hop on a plane or a train, does everything work out exactly like you expect. There's always bumps in the road. And so allow your book or your creative project you're writing to morph, to change along with you. Allow new creative ideas to come, and don't be stuck on, this is the book I thought I was going to write, and suddenly I'm over here. That's a bad thing. You may need to come back to your message. You may need really good editors, because we all do, right, to wind it back around. But don't get so stuck on, this is what I need to write, and I'm writing about this other thing over here, and it doesn't fit, because we don't know yet if it fits.
Yeah, I heard a great story on that topic of the stuckness, and it was a coach on a coaching program, a dialing coaching program, webinar, like this sort of thing. And they said, and this guy says, I've been writing my book, and I've been at it for 7 years, and it's taken me, and the coach said, well, yeah, and it seems to me you probably just got the expectations about how long it was supposed to take wrong. Like you've underestimated. You've underestimated how long it's going to take. You've put some expectations on yourself that it should take X when it's taken Y. What's the problem? He refused to see a problem with this, and that kind of creative flexibility isn't what we're brought up to, where we're brought up to be, and where most of us have been in our careers, right? You know, if you said that to a boss, right, you just, you wouldn't even say it, would you?
Most of us are used to some kind of project management, and creative projects don't thrive and flourish under that strict boundary. Yeah.
So your second point is about getting unstuck, right?
Yeah. And there's a lot of ways to get unstuck. And I talk about this every time I ever talk about writing. Natalie Goldberg is one of the best writing teachers out there on the planet. She's written Writing Down the Bones. It's an old classic. But she has an exercise that if you're stuck, you sit down with your favorite pen and a piece of paper, and you write about what's in front of you. You write about what's out the window. You write about your desk. You write about how the chair feels. You write about what's going on with your hands as you hold the pen. You write about what is immediately in your presence right now. Are you hungry? Not about what you hope to do later, but what's going on right now. Do your feet touch the floor? And what that will do is ground you into the present and get your mind super focused and your body aligned. And there's something about that practice that if you just do that, all of a sudden it frees your mind. It's like that super focus frees up your mind to then go down whatever rabbit hole you want to. So that's my favorite unstuck exercise. Another one is to go walk or swim or get your body moving. And you might have to do that every day for a week before you get unstuck, because I believe, and now, I've been teaching this stuff for 25 years, but now all of a sudden there's all this work out there about how trauma gets stuck in our body and cellular memories are stuck in our body, right? And so now we know if we can move our body, even if it's just doing this, just a little bit, things release that are stuck in our lymph and stuck in our body, and just stretch your neck. And all of that allows for some creative process to be unleashed inside of ourselves. So even, I'm not exactly athletic. I try to walk, but there are days when I don't walk, but I do try to at least stretch a little bit in my chair when I'm sitting at my computer all day. So that's another top thing that I've seen really work, and most of us resist the heck out of that. It's like, no, I'm supposed to be writing. I'm supposed to be sitting, this is my writing time. And I'm like, yeah, but if you're stuck and it's not coming, go do 20 minutes of exercise and forget about the writing. And I tell you, a week later, it will all break free. Those are two of my favorites. I've got lots more, but.
Okay. Should we go for the next topic? So the next topic is focusing on the target reader.
So here's the other thing. After you have written, because it says I'm not plugged in here. Hang on, I'm gonna lose you in a minute. Okay. There we go. After you've written because you're called to write and you need some cathartic writing, then you're serious about getting it into a first draft manuscript and actually writing a book. You have to start thinking about what is it that your reader really wants. So you can write your story all day long and it's important to you, but how interesting or helpful is it going to be for your reader? So at some point in the journey, it does not have to be the first thing, but at some point before you start working with an editor, you got to start thinking, who do I hope to help with this book? What is my core message? Am I teaching something? Am I inspirational? Am I talking about an adoptive journey from the perspective of someone who's been adopted? Am I talking about trauma? Am I talking about moving 20 times when I was a kid? And who am I going to help with that? And why do they need to read that? And what is it that you're hoping to inspire them with, or what knowledge do you want to leave them with? So here's what's so interesting. I'm not big on that avatar thing. Like, my ideal client is a woman in their 60s and, makes X amount of money and has a garden. I mean, all of that's kind of true. And what's so interesting is when I look back at all my clients over the years, 80% of my clients have some kind of adoption triangle story. And I don't talk about it in my marketing. It's like there's something out there in the universe where someone will come to me and 6 months into working with them on their book, they'll say, oh yeah, and my adopted sister. And I'm like, oh, you understand the adoption triangle, right? It's like all of a sudden there are these invisible things that magnetize your readers to you and your clients to you that I don't think we understand. There's so much magic out there in the universe that allow yourself to think about who your ideal reader is, but then think beyond that. Like, what else are you putting out as part of who you are, the purpose of who you are? What are you putting out there in the world? And what kind of energy are the people out there attracted? Why are they attracted to you? Because that's your ideal reader as well. So think about all of that. I love going down these kind of woo places with you, Simon.
Yeah.
But I think it's when we are open to the magic, we're open to so much more receiving the wisdom and the unexpected blessings that can come our way. And often those of us who have been traumatized at some point in our lives like to control things. We all like to control things, right? And when we can let go of that a little bit, more can come into us.
Yeah. So last webinar that you so kindly did for us, Michelle, you talked about this, I guess, tension or exploration or whatever it is between, okay, so my book is for fellow adoptees, but maybe broadening it out. My book is for, people that have lost their mums, or, it is a bigger story. And so we've got complication here. We've got opposites going here. We've got we're saying on one hand, what does the reader want? And on the other hand, we're saying, what do I want to get out in the world?
Right.
So we're kind of like having to be happy with navigating the sometimes tension of those different needs. Like, okay, so am I going to focus it on just fellow adoptees? It may start that way, but then it may be broadened out. But I'm thinking of the title of the book, and I'm thinking of the subtitle, and people are going to see that, and the cover is so important. But presumably, do we do the title at the end? Like we do the title at the end. I remember being told this by we had a sociology lecturer at university who said, you had to write an essay or something, and he said, write the title at the end.
Yeah.
And all of us were like, what? How could, surely we have to start, we have to answer a question. We have to nail down what the essay is going to be about before we start writing. He said, no, write it at the end. And there's no one way, right? You can do it at the start, or you can do it at the end, or in the middle.
Yeah, there's a reason why we always say, here's your working title. It's your working cover. It's a suggested subtitle, but we don't know what we're going to end up with. One time I wrote a whole screenplay and didn't come up with the title until like the very end, because it was the sentence that I ended up putting in the screenplay. I didn't do anything with it, just for me, but the title ended up being one of the sentences, right, that I wrote. And you don't know that until you write. But I will say it helps focus you and your energy if you have a working title. I always say, get your name on a book cover, go into Canva or paint something or draw something, or take an envelope and write your book title and your name and draw a picture on it and put it up wherever your writing space is, because it'll help keep you motivated and focused. The other thing I often ask people, after you've written for a day or a week or a month and you feel like you're starting to get some of your story out, write the back cover of your book before your title, before anything else. When you write, say 300 words of the back cover, you get very laser focused about what is in the book. So an example would be, if you've picked up this book, I'm happy to tell you that you are going to know the exact 3 things you must do if you want to find your birth mother from a different country. And you're like, oh my gosh, that's it. That's what goes in the book, right? You get super laser focused. You know exactly what needs to go in the book. It may change, but it's a place to get you focused so that you can get actually some words pumped out on the right road after you've done the cathartic kind of, it's not even a first draft, if it's before a first draft, kind of gotten your story out, gotten everything out that you want to say, thrown everybody under the bus that you want to throw under the bus, gotten all your anger out. Then you do things like start thinking about a title, who your reader is, what you really want to say, write your back cover of the book, write maybe a preface, of who this book is for. The preface is why I'm writing this book. Sorry, there's a phone going, I don't know where. And someone said, should I do an introduction? So I just saw that pop up on the comments. You can write the introduction early or late. I've had that work both ways. For sure, you can write an introduction later if you want to.
So do we have to decide who the audience is somewhere along the process?
You do. I mean, you have to know if you're writing for kids, if you're writing for business people, if you're writing for people interested in adoption, if you're writing for entrepreneurs, because you're going to have a little bit of a slant there. Write a general book that everybody would be interested in, and it could be an adoptive story, but it's got to have enough up and down and healing and storytelling in there to be interesting to the whole general public, right? If you're going to write your story about searching for your birth family, if it's really exciting and you traveled to other countries and done all kinds of exotic things, that could be a general travel story. And there could be lots of reasons why all sorts of people would want to read that, right? But if you make it really focused about, here's the paperwork you need to go get, and here's what you need to file, and here's the offices you need to go to, that's different kinds of information that's only people searching would be looking for.
So if we were to open things up a bit, I just think that the classic adoptee first book is a memoir, right? And
usually
they look like memoirs, but some of the ones that I see, they look like a memoir, but really it's a lot about not only what's happened, but the healing stuff that's happened within it. And so it's verging on elements of self-awareness stuff, that kind of consciousness stuff, the the parts work that people have been through when they've been through therapy. So that's the kind of that's the classic kind of book. But also you see also the other angle that people are going down is their own story doesn't give them quite as much leeway as they'd like. So they're actually writing a fictional bit that's got parts of them, but other stuff as well that gives them a little bit more freedom. What else? What other stuff do you see coming through from?
So a couple of things. Writing fiction is much more difficult than writing nonfiction. You have to have a lot of character development. You really got to understand a story arc. So just think about that. It's probably more fun, but it is more difficult. Writing nonfiction can be a little drier. Doesn't need to have a story arc. You don't have to have a bunch of characters all interacting, right? How-to books are pretty popular right now. Here's the 10 things you must do to go find your birth parents, or here's what I did to find my birth parents in 48 hours, whatever it is. I see Leah's eyes. What? I used to write, I haven't written about this subject in a long time, but I used to write for a magazine about having an open adoption with the birth family and us as the adoptive family, right? That's very specific. And for the most part, gave hints and tips and how to make that work, right? Kind of how-to stuff. Although there was obviously healing and other things in there, most general public might be interested in reading one article, but they're not going to be interested in reading it on an ongoing basis. They may go, whoa, I didn't even know that existed. Like, that's a thing, right? And then the general public's done with it. I think you can write whatever your imagination takes you. Fiction, how-to, a memoir, a healing book. You could specifically write EFT and how EFT has helped you in your trauma therapy or hiking the Camino or whatever it is. And it just so happens that you're adopted and that's your trauma, right? It could be a totally different focus. And that's why I started our conversation with whatever your story is and whether, adoption's part of it, but is that where you're going to focus? And so and I've said this before, when I work with people who have had trauma in their lives, big or small or whatever, trauma's trauma, it's how we embody it. There's always more to us than just the trauma. And it is opening up to what is the part of you that makes you a whole person and not just the trauma, because we want to see all of you in the book. We want to see the good, the bad, the healing. We want to see the inspiration. Somebody I talked to not too long ago, not from here, from somewhere else, but had a very traumatic childhood and basically ended the story with, basically life sucks and I'm traumatized and I get it. And that's her story, but it's going to be hard to sell that book. And so we went through a couple of visioning exercises to help her envision what the next chapters might be for her. And I encouraged her not to actually publish the book quite yet, because she, that's a hard book to sell, really, when you're like, I went through all this trauma and life sucks. So I think I went down a little bit of a tangent there, Simon. There's a lot of ways to write a book, but try to make one that other people would be interested in reading.
I think the reason I haven't finished mine really is because I haven't had the structure or the vocabulary for the healing bit, because I wouldn't want to write just a straight memoir. I wouldn't want to write a straight story of what had happened. My interest is in the healing,
right?
And at one level, this is about healing, and at another level for me, where I see the world is like, you're only, I didn't believe I was primarily wounded till I read The Primal Wound. I had a concern that adoption had screwed me up. I had some feelings, some very strong, acute feelings about being wounded. But was I actually wounded? Like the whole idea of healing, it means that you're taking as for granted that there was a wound in the first place. Well, what was wounded? So what was, when I say to people, what's wounded? They look at me like I'm completely nuts, right? And that's why I probably haven't written the book, because it on one level, it is completely nuts. It goes completely against where everybody is in this space. So, I say to people that I have felt wounded, but have I actually been wounded? What's the sub? And then we disappear down there. We disappear. I disappear, and I lose people. So that's why I haven't written a book, because I haven't got to that place where I've felt that what I was saying lands.
For you, I think it would be interesting. I think this would be helpful for everyone on the call. But for you, Simon, I think it'd be really interesting. Like, what is it that you really do here? And don't answer it right now, but that's probably the core of the book. And there's like some safe space for discussion. There is a community of exploring ideas and being real and speaking truth. And so maybe some of those core concepts are what your book's really about. And I would explore that a little bit, as opposed to a memoir. Like how do you create safe space? I don't know, but I think those core elements are part of who you are and what you create.
But some memoir writers are writing books that look like memoirs, but have, because that's what people expect, right? Oh, yeah. So, but the healing element and the obvious healing elements are peppered throughout the book. So it's a bit like so there used to be kids TV programs on a Saturday morning that were working on two levels, right? So you can look at it from a kid level, but you can also look at it from an adult level as well. And they would appeal to both audiences. So when I'm reading a memoir, I'm looking for what's the healing. I'm more interested in the healing bit of it than I am in, oh, right, well, I sent 10 letters off and these people, and this wasn't my biome, and that wasn't. I'm not really all that interested in the story. I want the healing. So when I'm listening to one of these audio books or reading a book, I'm gravitating to where's the healing space here. You know, what is it? Where did the insights happen that allowed the healing? What were the epiphanies? How did the person's self-identity change? What was it that was going on? That's what I'm looking for. So you can write to me, the gap in the market, as I see it, is the full-on, this is the healing story. Everybody's presenting stuff that looks like memoirs, that doesn't have the obvious healing things in it. And I think, one of the challenges with that is that we always say, right, every adoptee's experience is different. And if everybody's experience is different, then everybody's healing is going to be different. So I can't say, this is how I healed and you can heal too, because that would be saying that my experience was like yours, your life was like mine, and we wouldn't feel comfortable doing that as adoptees.
I think there's enough common ground, though. Healing is the first step. You're saying you must heal. You're saying you must find a way that works for you. You need to at least look at the primal wound, right? So you have some commonalities there already that you're talking about.
Yeah.
that it's okay to be stuck and have a breakdown. In fact, it's probably necessary.
Yeah. I mean,
yeah, we're starting to outline your book here, Simon.
Okay. We better not do that because this is for the listeners, this webinar. It's not for me. Next bit, the next one that you had, number 4, was different types of editors.
So editing is a little bit in book publishing like buying a used car. It's all over the place and all different price ranges and all different features and benefits. And what I would say for this group is you want to find an editor that's a little bit trauma informed, or at least understands what that is, because editors can be brutal. And, you know, it's a little bit like going back to grade school with the red pen slashing through your words. And you want an editor that can at least understand how vulnerable your words are. And not all editors are. So we can talk technically about different kinds of editors, like there's developmental editor, copy editor, line editor, proofreader, all those kinds of things. And you start with someone that just helps you look at the overall picture. And do you need to move words around and paragraphs around? And is there a chapter missing? That's a developmental editor. But if you're out there shopping, you want to find somebody that is going to feel you. There has to be a match. And so I don't usually recommend just going and finding an editor that charges so much per word and you're done. That works when you're at the very end at copy editing. But at the beginning, when you want someone to work with you to help really massage these words into a beautiful story, find an editor that you jive with, or a company. Like with us, it's, you know, if you came into our publishing company, we have a variety of editors, and I usually match somebody up based on my own intuition and who's got time, but all of our editors are trauma informed. So that's one of the things I want to say about editing. And you don't, you know, you can go really expensive, you can go really cheap. And the money's not the thing. It's, you got to get the energetic match.
Yeah. So one of the things that fascinates me in this whole area of conversation, working with different people, whatever, is this, you know, the validation versus the coaching, right? So in the adoptee space, I read the Primal Wound, and I think,
yeah,
this explains everything. This is validating me, and then what actually happened from that was it validated me, and then it kind of like, okay, so I'm primarily wounded. I'm stuck with this, and luckily I was hanging around in places that I got unstuck. And so some people will, you know, like an editor will has to kind of validate on one level, and also on another level they have to coach, which means to see.
Yeah. There's a lot of coaching that goes on, and really, you know, what I might say or another editor might say is something like, so in this sentence, well, tell me what you really meant by this, or this paragraph, or this chapter. What did you really mean by this? What is the message you're trying to get out? Like, not change your words, just get clarity. Ask questions, help give you clarity. And may say, wow, you really threw this person under the bus. Is that what you want to do? Do you want to leave that in the book? Because we watch for that, because people's anger comes out and it feels so good to get it on paper. And then once it's published, is that what you really want to do? And so we ask questions like that, or we'll say something like, you know, maybe you need to call this out better. You can change the name, but maybe you need to just call a spade and say what this is here, what's going on here, right? So a good editor will ask those kinds of questions, but never question like how you wrote it or what you wrote, just more clarifying questions. And maybe say this paragraph's really clunky. We do this all the time. This paragraph's really clunky. Yeah, go spend 15 minutes and read it out loud to yourself 2 or 3 times until you can smooth it out a bit.
What I can see all those bits with that, the kind of at the micro level. What about the macro level coaching on coaching stroke validation on this stuff, if that makes sense?
So what do you mean by validation?
Well, so validation means yes, you're right. Oh, okay. So here's the real question that I'm talking about here, right? Here's the real concern that I've got. The real concern is that we're all told to get our truth out. That's like you've got to get your truth out. You've got to get your truth out. You know, adoptees, our voices have been ignored. We've been sidelined. It's all been about the adoptive parents. So it's all been the industry view. Right. So so yeah, great. But if I had got my voice out when I was still really believing the rubbish in my head, then the rubbish in my head would have been validated, and it would have become my mindset would have become even more set. Right? So my beliefs would have got even stronger. This idea that she didn't love me enough to keep me, the teddy bear was an effing consolation prize, right? So so that's one of my concerns when I see the get the voice out stuff.
Right. Right.
And I'm bringing that to a conversation that is about getting our book out.
Well, so a couple things. We're not therapists, we're book editors, right? We're helping you to write.
Don't expect know the difference between the two,
right?
Because I clearly haven't. Right, I'm actually a book editor about a big thing. I guess I'm just seeing a parallel, and I'm
right. No, totally. I think it's totally valid, and I want to talk about this. A good book editor and a good publisher is going to help you make your voice stronger, and maybe say, ending your book with "Life Sucks," although someone said that was a great book title. It may be how you're feeling, but let's take it to at least one more chapter after that, right? That's as far as we go as a therapist, right? We're not therapists, we're book editors. So I think, I don't know if I have a good answer for you. I would say don't. So I've had people come to me and say, my husband of 50 years died, 3 months ago. I want to write a book. And I've said it's too soon. Wait a year or two. It's just, write for yourself, but don't write the book yet, right? You're just going through everything. I don't have an answer.
I think that is a brilliant answer. I think that is a brilliant answer. So and from that, if I was going to do it, I guess I would write for myself first.
Yeah.
And then I would figure out what I was going to keep from that.
Yeah, Donna's got some interesting comments here about writing her first chapter in an anthology in a fog, right? And that's what often happens, even if you're writing about something that happened 20, 30, 40 years ago. If you're writing about it for the first time and going deep, it's going to feel like a fog. And that's why you hear about people, tearing up their first manuscript. You hear these stories, and I rewrote the whole thing. That's not a bad thing. it's because you went through a process to get to where you are now, and now you're ready to write the book. Like Donna, I would love for you to go rewrite that first chapter now. What would it look like now? Right? And so I don't have an answer for you in terms of validating or not validating or whatever. I think as a writer, you have to kind of know what you want to say. And do you want to stick your stake in the sand on that? And have you done enough personal work to say, no, it's not really who I believe that's. I'm going to write about that because that's what I used to believe. And now I'm going to say what I believe now.
Yeah.
And that makes for a more interesting book as well, rather than Life Sucks.
So there's because there's some very interesting stuff here about adoptees who are writing coaches. And I see them putting stuff out there. And I'm thinking, are they still really struggling, or are they just sharing struggling stuff on social media to attract people who are struggling? Because I want a writing coach who had, and I would want a writing coach or a writing trainer somebody that had been through their process, got out the other side, and wanted to help other people. And I see this stuff by the adoptees, and I'm thinking, are they really there? Is that where they really are, or are they just putting out bait to catch the right fish? And it scares the bejesus out of me, or well, it does scare the bejesus out of me, and it does. I do question it. Does that make? Do you know what I'm talking about? Have you seen?
Yeah, and I don't know the answer. I mean, can you work on race cars if you're not a race car driver? Like, can I publish a book about weight loss, even though I don't know anything about the subject? I think the answer is yes. So I think that what's the real goal? Is the goal to get the book written with someone who has a good emotional vibe with you, rather than someone who's been through your process. That's what I would put out there. And I think there's a lot of scary coaches all over the internet, coaches and all kinds of people. People are telling you you're going to make $2 million on Amazon in 3 months if you just buy their 16-point blueprint. And, there's a lot of scary shit out there. Excuse me.
So, good point. And to continue your metaphor, if I was, if I was going to read a book by a racing driver, because I wanted to become a racing driver, I'd want somebody that had won some stuff. I'd want to read a book.
Yes, but do you need but you were asking about the coach. Does the coach need to have been adopted or gone through trauma to help you write a good book? I'm not sure that's true. They need to be a really good coach. So I think it just needs to be a good emotional match.
It's a personal thing.
It's a personal thing. It needs to be.
Yeah. And we're talking different things. I'm talking about writing coaches or editors, and it's two different things. Two different things.
Yeah, you need a coach who's trauma informed. It does not necessarily mean that they have to have gone through the same trauma you have, but they need to understand that. And trust issues, and abandonment issues. Like, I hate to say it, but editors and coaches leave, they ghost you. It's craziness. that's gonna trigger everything too. Yeah.
So the last one is about different types of publishing and finding what will work best for you and your needs. That's your last topic.
Yeah, and it's a little bit like building a house. I think is the analogy that I like to give. You're going to build a house you got a plot of land and you're going to build a house. What do you want to build? Are you going to be your own contractor? And I don't know if it's called the same stuff in the UK. I don't remember. But, are you going to go find all your subcontractors? Are you going to get someone to draw out your blueprints? Are you going to go down to city planning? Are you going to do all of those things? Or are you going to hire someone to do part of that? Or are you going to hire someone to do all of it? And that's really the analogy. So how much do you love personally to get in and learn all that stuff? Do you want to learn about publishing? Do you want to learn about editing? Do you want to hire someone else to do all or part of it? Do you want to do the marketing and the distribution yourself? Do you think that sounds really fun, or do you want to work with someone else to do that? And when you know yourself and the level of how much you like to learn all the specific details of doing things, then you'll know, then it's much easier to know what you need to hire out for. So layout and design is pretty technical. And some people love to learn that and love to learn typography and gutters and margins and spine width and all that. And other people are like, oh my gosh, it sounds like Chinese math to me. No, take it. Right. And so I think publishing's pretty technical. Editing's pretty technical, and you can hire out all or bits of it. The self-publishing or working with a publisher almost doesn't matter. You'll make more money if you self-publish, but you have to do 100% of your distribution and marketing yourself. And so will you really make more money? It depends how good of a marketer you are, right? And that's often not a question, because I work on both sides. I help people self-publish and I publish for them, but that's also often not a question that we even need to talk about up front. The question up front is, how much do you want to do? Do you want help with book covers? Do you want help with layout and design? Do you want help with editing? Do you just want to turn over your manuscript to somebody and say, turn it into a book for me? And how much money do you want to spend? Right? You're weighing that up. And so, you know, you want the big mansion, you're hiring a contractor, go buy me a mansion, this is my vision. Or do you have to scale down a little bit the mansion to a country cottage and be happy with that and still turn it over, do part of it yourself?
So yeah, I guess one way would be to look at those processes and find a, you know, Google it, find a list of what's involved in the publishing a book, and then have a look down and see which bits that which bits you know already, and which bits you want to learn, and which bits you want to outsource.
Yeah, I worked with somebody that came from you, Simon, who had self-published on Amazon, and we went through her Amazon account and found, like, I don't know, 40 or 50 things we could tweak and make better. Just because you don't know all the stuff, like I know the stuff, it doesn't make it wrong. She still self-published and sold a bunch of books, right? So she was successful. We just went in and did an overhaul. And so I hope that's going to help her sell more books. Things like keywords and SEO and tweaking the description and all that kind of stuff.
Wow, we're bang on time. We're bang on
cool.
time. We're bang on time.
I have kind of gone through the comments. I love them. Thank you all for sharing your comments as you go. Thank
you, everybody. And most obviously, thank you, Michelle. Thank you for doing this for us again. You know, the idea for this webinar came out of the last webinar that you did, and I was really so delighted when you stood up and said, "Yeah, well, I'm up for doing another one." So, yeah, it's just
I just stuck my email in there because a few people asked for it. Michelle at Grace Point Publishing, or just go find Grace Point Publishing. You'll find me.
Brilliant. Thanks a lot. And
thank you, Simon.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Go write. Everybody go write. You have a message. Okay. Bye.
Thanks a lot, guys. Bye-bye.